They gave the black sheep to humiliate the widow, but when they discovered the price of her wool, Jessica Mitchell held tightly to little Emma's hand as she walked along the muddy dirt road leading to her modest property. At 27, she faced the cruel reality of raising a 5-year-old daughter alone, after losing her husband in a construction accident just 3 months prior. The insurance money had quickly run out between medical expenses and the funeral, leaving only debts and the small house inherited from her family. It was on that cold June morning that her mother-in-law, Mrs. Dorothy, appeared at her door with a smile Jessica knew well. It was the same smile she used before making some cruel remark about her daughter-in-law's humble origins or about how Michael had married beneath his social standing. "Good morning, Jessica," said Mrs. Dorothy, adjusting the black shawl over her shoulders. "I came to bring something for you and the girl." Jessica cautiously opened the screen door, noticing her mother-in-law was not alone. Behind her walked her brother-in-law, Derek, pulling a rope tied around the neck of a completely black sheep. The animal seemed nervous and kept its head low, as if it knew it was being used as an instrument of humiliation. "What is this, Mrs. Dorothy?" asked Jessica, trying to keep her voice steady. "Why, my dear, it's a gift," replied the mother-in-law, with that false tone of generosity Jessica knew so well. "Since you can't properly support Emma, I brought this sheep to help you." Derek let out a low, unpleasant laugh. "It's a defective sheep, sis-in-law. Black as misfortune. Nobody wants to buy black wool, everyone knows that. But at least you'll have an animal for the yard." Jessica felt the blood rise to her face. She knew exactly what that meant. Mrs. Dorothy had purposely chosen a sheep considered worthless to make her opinion about her daughter-in-law's financial situation clear. It was a public humiliation, as some neighbors had come out of their houses to watch the scene. "We don't need charity," said Jessica, raising her chin with dignity. "Of course you do," retorted Mrs. Dorothy, looking meaningfully at Emma, who was hiding behind her mother's legs. "A child can't live on pride alone. Accept the animal, for the girl's sake." Emma peeked curiously at the black sheep, which looked back at her with large, sad eyes. There was something different in those eyes, an intelligence that seemed almost human. The animal's wool was dense and uniform, covering its entire body with a deep black color that shone slightly under the morning sun. Jessica took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the neighbors' curious stares. Mrs. Martha from the house next door had stopped hanging clothes on the line to watch. Mr. Harold interrupted mending his fence so as not to miss anything. Everyone waited for her reaction, some with pity, others with the cruel curiosity of those who enjoy witnessing the humiliation of others. "All right," she finally said, reaching out to take the rope. "Thank you." "You're welcome, my dear," replied Mrs. Dorothy, with evident satisfaction in her voice. "I hope you take good care of her. Black sheep need a lot of care, even though they're worth almost nothing." Derek still chuckled softly before following his mother down the road. "If you need help with something more serious, just call sis-in-law. A man is always missed in a house." Jessica closed the door as soon as they walked away, feeling tears of anger and humiliation burning in her eyes. She wouldn't cry in front of Emma. She wouldn't give anyone that satisfaction. Through the window, she saw some neighbors still whispering, probably speculating about her financial situation. "Mommy, the sheep is pretty," said Emma, watching the animal through the screen door. "Yes, my love," agreed Jessica, discreetly wiping her eyes. "Let's take her to the yard." The backyard was small but well kept. Jessica had maintained the vegetable garden that Michael had planted before leaving for his last job. There were a few chickens, 2 ducks, and an old goat that gave little milk. The fence was in good condition, enough to keep the sheep safe. As soon as they released the animal, it moved away to a corner of the yard far from the other animals. The old goat, named Bessie, approached to sniff the newcomer, but the sheep shied away, preferring to stay alone under the shade of the mango tree. "She's shy," observed Emma, sitting on the grass at a safe distance. "She must be scared," said Jessica, watching the animal's behavior. "I imagine she wasn't treated with much kindness." That first night, Jessica lay in bed, thinking about how she would feed another animal. Money was tight, and every penny needed to be accounted for. She worked sewing for some neighbors and occasionally sold eggs from the chickens, but the income barely covered basic expenses. Emma, however, seemed fascinated by the new backyard resident. The next morning she woke up early and ran to observe the sheep through the kitchen window. "Mommy, she looks different," said Emma, pointing to the yard. Jessica approached the window and was surprised. During the night, the sheep had moved and was now positioned near the chicken coop, as if protecting the birds. But the strangest thing was that the chickens, normally restless in the morning, seemed calm and orderly around her. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. During breakfast, which consisted of homemade bread with butter and warm milk from the goat Bessie, Emma couldn't stop talking about the sheep. "She's smart, Mummy. I saw from my bedroom window that she lined up the chickens to eat." Jessica smiled, thinking her daughter was imagining things. Children always see magic in ordinary situations. But when she went to put out corn for the chickens, she really noticed they were calmer than usual. The sheep watched everything from a distance, with those intelligent eyes. When Jessica approached with a bucket of fresh water, the animal didn't run away, but didn't come closer either. There was a dignity in it that Jessica recognized, the same wounded dignity she herself carried. "You've been humiliated too, haven't you?" she murmured, placing the bucket near the sheep. "They also told you that you're worthless." The animal stared at her, as if understanding every word. For a moment, Jessica had the strange feeling that there was a silent communication between them, a mutual understanding of what it meant to be rejected and considered inferior. That weekend, Emma insisted on combing the sheep's wool with her fingers. Jessica initially resisted, fearing the animal might be aggressive, but Emma had already approached before she could stop her. To her surprise, the sheep remained completely still while the little girl's fingers ran through its wool. Emma worked with the concentration of an adult, separating small tufts and smoothing them carefully. "Mum, look how soft it is," said Emma, showing a small tuft of black wool. "It's softer than Grandma Dorothy's blanket." Jessica touched the wool and was amazed. It really was incredibly soft and had a subtle sheen she hadn't noticed before. The texture was even and dense, unlike any wool she knew. "It really is beautiful," admitted Jessica, watching how the sunlight made the black wool shine with bluish highlights. Mrs. Martha, the neighbor, appeared at the dividing fence at that moment. She was a woman in her early 50s, long widowed, who had always had a cordial relationship with Jessica. "Good afternoon, Jessica. How is the sheep that Mrs. Dorothy brought?" "She's well, Mrs. Martha. Emma is having fun combing her wool." "May I take a look?" asked the neighbor, with genuine curiosity. Jessica invited her into the yard. Mrs. Martha approached the sheep cautiously and watched Emma working. "What beautiful wool," she commented, gently touching the animal. "I've never seen black wool so uniform like this. Usually they're somewhat grayish or have spots." "Mrs. Dorothy said she's defective because she's black," said Jessica, repeating the words that still stung. "Defective?" Mrs. Martha laughed. "Jessica, my mother-in-law was a weaver. She always said that good natural black wool is rarer than hen's teeth. Most people dye white wool to make it black, but a naturally black wool like this can be quite valued by those who understand the subject." Jessica felt a pang of hope, but tried not to get her hopes up. Perhaps Mrs. Martha was just trying to console her. "Do you really think it's worth anything?" "I'm not sure, but I know an artisan downtown who works with wool. If you want, I can ask him the next time I go to the city." "I would be very grateful," said Jessica, feeling for the first time in months a spark of hope. That night, after Emma fell asleep, Jessica sat on the porch watching the sheep in the yard. The animal seemed to contemplate the stars, a dark silhouette outlined against the night sky. There was something deeply serene about that scene that brought peace to Jessica's restless heart. She thought of her husband, how proud he would be to see her resisting his family's provocations with dignity. Michael always said that a person's worth wasn't measured by their bank account, but by their character. Perhaps that sheep, rejected for its color, was a reminder that appearances can be deceiving. The following Monday, Mrs. Martha returned with news. Her face was flushed with excitement when she knocked on Jessica's door. "Jessica, you need to hear what the artisan told me about black wool." "What is it, Mrs. Martha?" asked Jessica, trying to control her anxiety. "He said that quality natural black wool can be worth 3 times more than common white wool, and he asked to take a look at your sheep if you allow it." Jessica felt her heart race. Was it possible that Mrs. Dorothy, in her cruelty, had inadvertently given her something valuable? "Of course he can come whenever he wants. He said he might come by tomorrow afternoon, after he closes the workshop." That night, Jessica could hardly sleep. She kept imagining possibilities, trying not to get her hopes too high to avoid disappointment. But it was hard to contain the hope growing in her chest. The next morning, she watched the sheep with new eyes. The animal seemed to notice her renewed attention and came closer than usual when she brought the feed. For the first time since its arrival, the sheep allowed Jessica to gently touch its head. "You might be our salvation," murmured Jessica, stroking the soft wool. Who would have thought a gift meant to humiliate could turn into a blessing? Emma, who had overheard the conversation with Mrs. Martha, was equally anxious. She had spent the whole morning combing and arranging the sheep's wool, preparing it for the artisan's visit. "Mommy, will we become rich?" asked the girl, with the typical sincerity of a 5-year-old. "I don't know, sweetheart. But if the wool is valuable, at least we'll be able to buy better food and maybe fix the roof before winter." In the afternoon, promptly at 2 o'clock, Mrs. Martha arrived accompanied by a middle-aged man, thin, with graying hair and hands, calloused from decades of working with his own hands. He introduced himself as Mr. George and greeted Jessica with simple yet genuine courtesy. "Are you the owner of the black sheep that Mrs. Martha told me about?" "Yes, Mr. George. She's right there in the yard." The craftsman walked slowly to the yard, observing the sheep intently. Jessica noticed his hands trembled slightly as he bent down to examine the wool more closely. "May I touch it?" he asked, with a reverence that surprised Jessica. "Of course." Mr. George ran his hands over the sheep's wool with the care of someone handling something precious. His eyes widened progressively as he examined the texture, density, and uniformity of the color. "Good heavens," he murmured, almost in prayer. "Mrs. Mitchell, where did you get this sheep?" "It was a gift from my mother-in-law," replied Jessica, without going into details about the circumstances. "Do you have any idea what you have here?" asked Mr. George, standing up and looking at her seriously. "No, Mr. George, that's why I called you." "This is not ordinary wool, ma'am. This is wool from a very old, very rare lineage. Natural black wool like this, of this quality, I've only seen once in my life, in a book about special sheep breeding." Jessica felt her legs go weak. "You mean it's worth something?" "Worth it?" Mr. George chuckled softly. "Ma'am, this wool is worth more per pound than many people earn in a month. There are specialized buyers who pay fortunes for material like this." "About how much?" asked Jessica, barely able to breathe. Mr. George did some mental calculations, looking at the sheep again. "Just what's on the animal now, if sheared carefully, should yield about 11 pounds of good wool. In the specialized market, it could fetch between $500 and $800 per pound." Jessica had to lean on the fence to keep from falling. That meant just the wool the sheep already had could bring between $2,500 and $4,000. It was more money than she had seen together in the last 5 years. "And will she keep producing wool?" "Of course, ma'am. A sheep of this quality, well cared for, can be sheared twice a year, and if well fed, the quality only improves." Emma, who had listened to the whole conversation, ran to hug the sheep. "You really are special," she shouted, kissing the animal's snout. Mrs. Martha was beaming. "I knew there was something different about this wool. The color is so deep, so uniform." Mr. George turned to Jessica seriously. "Ma'am, may I make a suggestion? Let me broker the sale for you. I know the right buyers, serious people who pay a fair price. In return, I'll take 10% of the value. It's an honest percentage." "You would do that?" asked Jessica, still in shock. "It would be an honor. It's rare to find material like this, and you seem to need help entering this market." Jessica accepted the proposal on the spot. For the first time in months, she felt there was light at the end of the tunnel. Perhaps God had used Mrs. Dorothy's very malice to bless her family. "When can we do the first shearing?" she asked. I can come back on Saturday with the right tools. It's important to do it carefully so as not to damage the quality. And I'll bring some samples to show buyers beforehand." After Mr. George and Mrs. Martha left, Jessica sat in the yard watching the sheep with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. Emma played near the animal, which seemed more relaxed and confident than in the first days. Did Mrs. Dorothy know its value? Jessica thought aloud. The question bothered her all week. Was it possible that her mother-in-law knew about the quality of the wool and still gave the sheep as a form of humiliation? Or had it genuinely been a cruel attempt to give a worthless gift? On Thursday, her suspicion grew when Derek appeared at her door unannounced. He rarely visited, especially alone, and seemed nervous. "Hi, sis-in-law. Came to see how you're managing with the sheep." "We're fine, Derek. Emma loves taking care of her." "And the wool? Have you thought about doing anything with it?" he asked, trying to sound casual, but Jessica noticed the tension in his voice. "Why do you ask?" replied Jessica, deciding not to reveal yet what she had discovered. "Oh, just curious. If you want, I can take it to sell in the city. Should fetch a few bucks even though it's black." The offer confirmed Jessica's suspicions. Derek knew something, and if he knew, it was likely Mrs. Dorothy knew too. "Thank you, Derek, but don't worry, I'm handling it." "Are you sure? These sales things require experience. You might end up getting cheated." "I'm sure, thank you." Derek left visibly displeased, which only increased Jessica's certainty that there was much more behind her mother-in-law's generosity. On Saturday, Mr. George returned accompanied by a young assistant and brought professional shearing equipment. Jessica had prepared a clean, sheltered area for the procedure. "We'll do it very carefully," said the craftsman. "It's important that the first shearing is perfect to ensure the quality of the next ones." The process was long and meticulous. The sheep remained surprisingly calm, as if understanding the importance of the moment. Emma watched everything with fascination, asking questions about each step. When they finished, there were 12 pounds of the highest quality black wool, carefully separated and packaged. "Better than I expected," said Mr. George, examining the material. "This wool will be a hit with my buyers. How long to manage a sale?" "If all goes well, I'll have an answer in 2 weeks. I'll send samples to 3 different buyers to ensure the best price." Jessica spent the next few days in a mix of anxiety and hope. She cared for the sheep with even more affection, improving its feed with the last savings she had. If the investment paid off, it would be more than compensated. Emma seemed to instinctively understand that something important was happening. She began talking to the sheep every day, telling it about school and her dreams of having new toys and pretty clothes. "When we sell your wool, I'll buy a doll for you too," said the girl, petting the animal. "All sheep should have a doll to care for." On Wednesday of the following week, Mr. George appeared at her door with a face radiant with joy. "Mrs. Mitchell, I have great news. Did you manage to sell it?" "I got 3 offers. The best is for $700 per kilogram for all the wool. That's $3,850 minus my 10%. Jessica had to sit down. It was more money than she had ever dreamed possible. "And there's more," continued Mr. George. "The buyer who made the best offer wants an exclusive contract. He guarantees buying all the sheep's production for the next 2 years at the same price. It's an exceptional offer." "That means—" "It means you have a guaranteed and substantial income for the next few years. With 2 shearings a year, we're talking about over $7,000 a year just from the wool." Jessica began to cry, but they were tears of relief and gratitude. Emma ran to hug her mother, not fully understanding what was happening but feeling the joy in the air. "Can I accept the offer?" asked Mr. George. "Yes, you can. And thank you so much for everything." That night, for the first time since her husband's passing, Jessica slept in peace. The next day she would use part of the money to buy quality feed for the sheep and a new dress for Emma. The rest would be carefully saved to secure their future. But her peace would not last long. On Friday, Mrs. Dorothy appeared at her house, accompanied not only by Derek, but also by her eldest son, Richard, who lived in Chicago and rarely visited the area. "Jessica, we need to talk," said Mrs. Dorothy, in a tone of voice Jessica had never heard before. "About what, Mrs. Dorothy?" "About the sheep we gave you." What about the sheep? Richard stepped forward to speak. He was a 40-year-old man, well-dressed, with the air of someone used to giving orders. Sister-in-law, we discovered there was a mistake when we gave you that sheep. What kind of mistake? The sheep wasn't meant to be given away. It was supposed to be sold to a specialized breeder. There was a mix-up at my brother's boss's farm. Jessica felt her stomach turn to ice. What do you mean? Derek, clearly uncomfortable, avoided looking her in the eye. We didn't know it was a special sheep. The boss wants it back. The sheep was given to me. You yourselves said it was a gift because it was defective. Look, sister-in-law, said Richard, adopting a condescending tone. We know you got attached to the animal, but it's better to return it before the boss takes legal action. Jessica straightened her shoulders, feeling anger rise in her chest. What legal action? He could claim theft. It will be very unpleasant for you and for Emma. Theft? Jessica's voice came out louder than she intended. You came here in front of the neighbors, gave me the sheep saying it was because it was worthless, and now you're talking about theft. Mrs. Dorothy tried to calm the situation. Jessica, no need to get upset. It's just a misunderstanding. We can resolve this amicably. We will resolve it, Mrs. Dorothy. The sheep stays with me, which is where you brought it. Richard changed his tone, becoming more aggressive. Sister-in-law, you're not understanding. That sheep is worth a lot of money, much more than you can imagine. It's not something for a simple person like you to take care of. Oh, now it's worth a lot of money. Jessica laughed bitterly. When you brought it, you said it was defective, worthless, good only to remind me of my place. That's exactly what, interrupted Jessica. You came here to humiliate me, to make light of my situation, and now that you've discovered the sheep is worth something, you want it back. Derek finally spoke. Jessica, be reasonable. You can keep part of the money if you return the animal. A part? Jessica was incredulous. How generous of you, huh? Offering a part of the money for something you gave me for free. Emma, who was playing in the yard, approached upon hearing the raised voices. She ran to hug Jessica's legs, looking fearfully at her father's relatives. Mommy, are they going to take our sheep? Asked the girl with tears in her eyes. The sight of her frightened daughter made Jessica make a definitive decision. No, my love. The sheep is ours. No one is taking her. Richard made an impatient face. Jessica, don't be ignorant. You don't have the resources to fight the boss in court. He has lawyers, money, influence. Accept our offer and come out ahead. What offer? $3,000 for the sheep. Jessica almost laughed out loud. They were offering less than she had already earned just from the first shearing. No. $5,000 then. It's our final offer. No, the sheep stays with me. Mrs. Dorothy stood up, clearly irritated. Jessica, don't be foolish. You don't know what kind of trouble you're getting into. The only trouble I see here is you trying to steal from me something you yourselves gave me. We'll resolve this another way, threatened Richard. You'll regret being so stubborn. After they left, Jessica sat on the porch, trembling with anger and fear. Emma snuggled up beside her, still frightened. Mommy, why do they want our sheep? Because they found out she's special, sweetheart, and greedy people always want what belongs to others. That night, Jessica Mitchell could barely sleep. She kept wondering what kind of measures Richard had mentioned. She didn't have money for lawyers, nor did she know influential people who could help her. The next morning she decided to go see Mr. George to tell him what had happened. Maybe he had some idea of how to proceed. They said all that? Asked the craftsman after hearing the account. They did. I'm afraid of what they might do. Mrs. Mitchell, may I make a suggestion? Of course, Mr. George. Look for the lawyer who works with the rural cooperative folks. Attorney David. He's a good man and understands these land and animal issues. Explain the situation to him. But I don't have money to pay a lawyer. Talk to him first. Sometimes they work out a payment plan or only charge if they win the case. Jessica followed Mr. George's advice. Attorney David was a man of about 60, with a simple office in the town center. He agreed to see her without obligation to hear her story. Do you have witnesses that they gave the sheep as a gift? Asked the lawyer. Yes, Mrs. Martha and Mr. Harold saw everything. They can confirm that the mother-in-law clearly said it was a gift because the sheep was defective. And can you prove you cared for the animal invested in its food? I have the receipts for the feed and the veterinary care. Attorney David smiled. Mrs. Mitchell, it seems to me you have a solid case. They can't give something as a gift and then want it back just because they found out it's worth money. So I can keep the sheep? You can. And if they insist on bothering you, we can file a lawsuit for threats and attempted misappropriation. Jessica left the office feeling stronger and more confident. She wouldn't let anyone steal from her the chance to give Emma a better life. But her peace of mind didn't last long. The following Wednesday, Derek showed up at her house with two unfamiliar men, saying they were sent by the boss to recover the property. I'm not handing her over, said Jessica firmly. It's no use being stubborn, sister-in-law. The boss has the sheep's papers. What papers? One of the men stepped forward. Ma'am, I am the legal representative of Mr. Frank Anderson. I have here the documentation proving the sheep was stolen from his property. Stolen by whom? By you. The sheep left the farm without authorization. Jessica handed the man Attorney David's card. Talk to my lawyer. The sheep was given as a gift in front of witnesses. The men left, but Jessica knew it was far from over. She called Attorney David and scheduled an urgent meeting. They showed up with this talk of papers and theft, she told the lawyer. Don't worry, it's intimidation. They have no legal basis for this, but we need to act. I'll prepare a petition to secure possession of the sheep in your name. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out, now continuing. While the legal situation unfolded, Jessica's life began to transform with the money from the first wool sale. She managed to pay off all the overdue debts, bought new clothes for Emma, and significantly improved the family's diet. The sheep, which they had nicknamed Hope at Emma's suggestion, was more beautiful and healthy than ever. The quality feed had made her wool grow even denser and shinier. Mommy, why are Grandma Dorothy and Uncle Derek being so mean to us? Asked Emma one night before bed. Sometimes, my love, people do bad things when they feel envy or greed, but you don't need to worry. Hope is ours and will continue to be. The following Saturday, Mr. George brought news about the specialty wool market. Mrs. Jessica, another interested buyer, has appeared. An exporter who works with European artisans. He's offering even more money. More money? How much? 900 reais per kilo. And he wants an exclusive 3-year contract. Jessica could hardly believe what she was hearing. It was more than she had ever dreamed possible. Is there any problem with me accepting, considering the contract I already have? No. The first contract was for a single purchase. You are free to negotiate with whomever you want. Jessica authorized Mr. George to close the new deal. With that guaranteed income, she could even think about expanding the business, perhaps buying more sheep of the same lineage. But her hopes for peace were interrupted again when she learned that Richard had hired a private attorney to try to reclaim Hope. The legal dispute was intensifying. Attorney David, can they really take the sheep from me? Asked Jessica, worried. Not if they don't have proof that the animal was actually stolen. And from what you've told me, it was quite the opposite. They gave it as a gift in front of witnesses. But they have more money, more influence. Mrs. Jessica, in law, what matters are the facts, not money, and the facts are on your side. The attorney was right. When the case reached the courthouse, Mrs. Martha and Mr. Harold confirmed their versions of events. Mrs. Dorothy and Derek were forced to admit they had indeed given the sheep as a gift. The judge was clear in his decision. The sheep legally belonged to Jessica, and any attempt to take it by force would constitute the crime of wrongful appropriation. The legal victory brought relief, but also increased the tension with her husband's family. Richard made veiled threats about other ways to resolve the situation, which left Jessica in a state of constant alert. On Attorney David's recommendation, she improved the security of her property, installing a taller fence and asking the neighbors to watch for any suspicious movements. A week after the court decision, Jessica received an unexpected visit. Frank Anderson himself, the boss Michael had worked for, appeared at her door. He was a man of about 70, wearing a leather hat with a face weathered by the sun. Jessica recognized him from the few times she had picked Michael up from work. Mrs. Jessica, may I speak with you? Of course, Mr. Frank. Please, come in. I'd prefer to talk here on the porch if it's not a bother. As you wish. Frank Anderson seemed ashamed and uncomfortable. He was silent for a few moments before he began to speak. Mrs. Jessica, I came here to apologize for this whole mess. Apologize? The sheep you have really should have been given to your husband before he passed. It was part of an agreement we had. Jessica felt the ground move beneath her feet. What do you mean? Your Michael had worked for me for 2 years without receiving proper vacation pay or a 13th month salary. When he said he was going to look for other work because you needed more money, I offered that sheep as compensation for the overdue vacation pay. He never told me that. Michael was proud. He said he would tell you only after the deal was closed, but then the accident happened. Frank Anderson took off his hat and ran his hand through his graying hair. When I found out that Mrs. Dorothy had given the sheep to you saying it was defective, I was very angry. I sent Richard and Derek to come get the animal because I thought they had pulled a dirty trick. But then you changed your mind. I spoke with my wife. She reminded me that the sheep was Michael's right, so it's your right. I came here to confirm that you can keep Hope without any problem. Jessica felt tears of relief and gratitude stream down her face. You have no idea what this means to me, Mr. Frank. I think I do, and I apologize for the pressure they put you through. It wasn't right. And did Mrs. Dorothy know the sheep was valuable when she brought it here? Frank Anderson took a deep breath. Mrs. Mitchell, I'll be frank with you. Mrs. Dorothy always knew that sheep was worth a fortune. She and Derek came to me offering money for me to deny the agreement I had with Michael. Jessica felt anger explode in her chest. They wanted to buy your denial of the agreement? They did. They offered $2,000 for me to say I never promised Michael anything. But I didn't accept. The honest man your husband was deserves respect, even after he's gone. Why did they do that? Why so much malice? Greed, Mrs. Mitchell. Mrs. Dorothy found out about the sheep's special lineage when the vet did a routine checkup on the farm animals. She planned everything to humiliate you and then reclaim the animal. Jessica could hardly believe the level of cruelty from her mother-in-law. But thank God justice was done, continued Frank. You won in law what was already rightfully yours. After the boss left, Jessica sat in the yard watching Hope. The sheep seemed to sense her emotion and came closer to be petted. You were always ours, weren't you? Murmured Jessica. Michael worked for you. You are part of the livelihood he left for us. Emma came home from school at that moment and ran to hug both her mother and the sheep. Mommy, why are you crying? They're tears of happiness, my love. I found out that Hope was always ours, that Daddy had earned her for us. Did Daddy know she was special? Maybe he didn't know about the wool's value, but he knew she was special for our family. That night, Jessica wrote a long letter to Michael, telling him everything that had happened and thanking him for the gift he had left for them. She kept the letter in a box along with photos of her husband, promising to read it again on the anniversary of his passing. The peace lasted 2 weeks. Then Mrs. Dorothy made her last attempt to regain control of the situation. She spread around the neighborhood that Jessica was involved in shady business, that the money she was making came from illegal activities. Mrs. Martha, is it true that Jessica is selling drugs? Asked Mrs. Dorothy, feigning concern. What kind of talk is that, Dorothy? Jessica is an honest girl. But where could all that money be coming from? A simple widow suddenly with money to renovate the house, buy new clothes. Well, it comes from the sheep's wool, you know that very well. Sheep's wool doesn't make that much money. There must be something behind it. Mrs. Martha, indignant, told Jessica about the gossip being spread. She's trying to destroy your reputation in the neighborhood, warned her friend. Jessica decided to confront the situation head-on. She organized a meeting at the community school and invited all the neighbors. She brought Mr. George to explain about the specialty wool market and Attorney David to speak about the legality of the whole situation. I want everyone to know the truth about what's happening, said Jessica to the audience of more than 30 people. I won't allow them to destroy my reputation with lies. Mr. George explained in detail about the rarity of natural black wool and how it was valued in the specialty market. He showed magazines and books on the subject, proving his own experience in the field. Attorney David read excerpts from the court decision that granted Jessica possession of the sheep and explained how the entire process had been conducted within the law. At the end of the meeting, the community itself turned against Mrs. Dorothy and Derek. People were outraged by the attempts at defamation and by the discovery of how they had tried to deceive Jessica. "You should be ashamed of yourselves," said Mrs. Martha, pointing at Jessica's mother-in-law. "You tried to humiliate a widow with a small child, and now you want to destroy her reputation because she succeeded in life." Mrs. Dorothy left the meeting humiliated and isolated. In the following days, many neighbors made a point of greeting Jessica with special affection, showing support and admiration for her resilience. With the social situation resolved, Jessica could focus on making plans for the future. The second wool sales contract had been signed, guaranteeing a stable income for the next 3 years. She decided to invest part of the money in improving the property. She completely repaired the roof, painted the house, fixed the fence, and expanded the yard to accommodate more animals. Mr. George suggested she consider acquiring more sheep of the same lineage to expand the business. "With the experience you already have and the reputation you're building, you could become a specialist in breeding this specific lineage," he said. "Where can I find other sheep like this?" "I know a breeder in rural Montana who works with rare lineages. I can make an introduction." The prospect of expanding the business excited Jessica. For the first time since her husband's passing, she had long-term plans and genuine hope for the future. Emma was also thriving. With improvements in nutrition and clothing, she had gained confidence at school. Her grades improved significantly, and she began to show interest in learning more about animals and agriculture. "Mommy, when I grow up, I want to help you take care of the sheep," the girl said one day. "Of course, my love, we can be business partners." "And can I study about animals in college?" "Yes, you can. With Hope watching over us, you can study whatever you want." The third month after discovering the wool's value brought a surprise. The European buyer who had signed a contract with Jessica expressed interest in visiting her personally during his trip to the United States. "He wants to see the origin of the wool he's buying," explained Mr. George. "It's common in the international market. They value the story behind the product." Jessica was nervous at the prospect of receiving a foreigner at her simple property, but Mr. George reassured her. This type of buyer values authenticity, not luxury. They want to see that the product comes from a genuine place, cared for with affection. The buyer, a Frenchman named Pierre Dubois, arrived on a Thursday morning, driving a rental car and accompanied by a Brazilian translator. He was a man of about 50, elegant but simple, who showed genuine interest in learning the whole story of Miracle. "This is a very rare lineage," he said through the translator. "In Europe, material like this is used by the finest artisans for exclusive pieces." Pierre photographed Miracle from various angles and asked permission to film a short video of the sheep grazing. "It's to show my clients in France. They greatly value knowing the origin of what they are buying." He was impressed with the quality of care Jessica provided the animal and with the evident affection between Emma and Miracle. "Madame has a beautiful story," he said in hesitant Portuguese. "Sheep brought luck to family." Before leaving, Pierre made a proposal that left Jessica in shock. He wanted to establish a long-term exclusivity contract with an upfront payment to secure the entire wool production for the next 5 years. "It's rare to find material of this quality with such a special story," he explained through the translator. "My clients pay more for products with an authentic narrative." The proposed amount was 3 times higher than the previous contract. Jessica would have to consult attorney David to understand all the legal implications, but it was a unique opportunity. After Pierre's visit, Jessica felt her life had taken a completely new direction. From a desperate widow, she was becoming a respected entrepreneur in the specialty products market. "Mommy, are we important now?" asked Emma after the Frenchman had left. "We've always been important, my love. The difference is that now other people recognize it too." That night, Jessica went out to the backyard and watched Hope under the moonlight. The sheep seemed to contemplate the stars, calm and majestic. "Thank you," murmured Jessica, stroking the soft wool. "Thank you for appearing in our life disguised as humiliation. Sometimes blessings come wrapped in strange ways." The sheep looked at her with those intelligent eyes, and for a moment, Jessica again had the feeling that there was a deep understanding between them. Time passed quickly. 6 months after discovering the wool's value, Jessica's life was unrecognizable. The house had been completely renovated. Emma was studying at a private school in the city, and they had a solid savings account for emergencies. Jessica had also enrolled in a correspondence course in rural management, determined to better understand the business she was building. The relationship with her husband's family remained strained. Mrs. Dorothy rarely appeared, and when she did, she maintained a formal coldness. Derek occasionally tried to reconnect, but Jessica kept a respectful distance. Richard, in turn, had completely given up on trying to recover Hope, especially after learning about the international contract. What surprised Jessica most was how her perspective on herself had changed. From a person who felt inferior and humiliated, she had become confident and respected in the community. Mrs. Martha watched her friend's transformation with pride. "Jessica, you're not the same person you were a year ago," she commented one day. "How so?" "You speak differently. You walk differently. You have a different sparkle in your eyes. Success has been good for you." "It wasn't the success, Mrs. Martha. It was discovering that I was worth more than I thought." The conversation made Jessica reflect on her journey. The real transformation hadn't begun with the money, but with the decision not to passively accept the humiliation they had tried to impose on her. 1 year after Hope's arrival, Jessica organized a small party in the backyard to celebrate. She invited all the neighbors who had supported her during the difficult times. "This party is to thank everyone who has been with us," she said, addressing the guests, "and to celebrate that sometimes the greatest blessings come in disguise." Emma, now 6 years old and much more confident, made a point of introducing Hope to all the guests, proudly telling them about the special wool and how the sheep had changed their lives. During the party, Mr. George brought some news. He had managed to locate 2 young sheep from the same lineage as Hope. The breeder from Montana was willing to sell them at a special price, considering Jessica's success. "With 3 sheep of this quality, you can triple your production," he explained. "And you'll still have a guarantee that the lineage will continue if you decide to breed them in the future." Jessica accepted the proposal on the spot. She had sufficient resources for the investment and the necessary experience to care for more animals. The 2 new sheep arrived a month later. Hope greeted them with initial curiosity, but soon established a clear hierarchy, positioning herself as the leader of the small flock. Emma was overjoyed with the new residents in the backyard. She named the 2 Faith and Victory, continuing the hopeful theme she had started with Hope. "Now we have a complete flock," said the girl, watching the 3 sheep grazing together. "That's true, my love, and each one has a special story to tell." With production tripled, Jessica could negotiate even better contracts. Pierre Dubois was so impressed with the consistent quality that he spontaneously increased the amounts paid and brought new buyers from his international network. The small property became a local reference. Other breeders began seeking Jessica out for advice on managing special sheep. She discovered she had a natural talent for teaching and began offering informal consulting. "You should formalize this," suggested Attorney David during one of his follow-up visits. "You could open a small specialized breeding consulting company." The idea excited Jessica. She had always enjoyed helping other people, and now she had knowledge and experience to share. On the 2nd anniversary of Hope's arrival, Jessica looked back and barely recognized the woman she had been. From a humiliated widow with no prospects, she had become a respected entrepreneur, confident mother, and independent woman. Emma had also grown a lot, not just physically but in maturity and self-esteem. She spoke knowledgeably about sheep breeding and showed genuine interest in continuing her mother's work in the future. "Mummy, do you think when I grow up we'll have a big farm with lots of special sheep?" the girl asked one day. "Maybe, my love. If that's what you want, we can work to achieve it." "I do want that, and I want to study hard to understand everything about animals." "Then let's move forward. With dedication and study, we can achieve anything." The 3rd year brought even more consolidation of the business. The Hope Wool brand had become known in the international specialty products market. Jessica received orders from various countries and had a waiting list for her products. She built a small structure suitable for shearing and initial wool processing, following all the quality standards required by international buyers. The property, once seen as small and insignificant, now received visitors from various parts of the country interested in learning her breeding techniques. Mrs. Martha, who had been crucial in the first difficult moments, had become a kind of informal partner, helping with visitor reception and some administrative aspects. "Jessica, sometimes I think all this was fate," she said one day. "How so?" "Mrs. Dorothy thought she was humiliating you, but she was actually handing you your independence. It's as if the universe used her malice to bless you." "Maybe, Mrs. Martha. Or perhaps it's just proof that when we don't give up, things work out." The reflection made Jessica think about her mother-in-law, who had practically disappeared from their lives. Occasionally she heard comments in town about how Mrs. Dorothy was becoming increasingly isolated, even from her own children. Derek rarely appeared in the area, and Richard had permanently moved to Chicago after the failure to recover Hope. The family that once seemed so united in their cruelty was now fragmented. Paradoxically, Jessica felt neither anger nor satisfaction with their situation. Success had brought a serenity that left no room for negative feelings. "Mommy, aren't you mad at Grandma Dorothy?" asked Emma one day. "No, sweetheart. She did what she did because her heart was sick with envy and spite. But in the end, she even helped us without knowing it." "How so?" "If she hadn't brought Hope to try to humiliate us, we would never have discovered our calling. Sometimes bad people end up helping without meaning to." The precocious wisdom of these conversations surprised Jessica. Emma was developing an understanding of life and relationships that many adults didn't possess. On the 4th anniversary of Hope's arrival, Jessica organized an even bigger event. She invited local authorities, representatives from rural cooperatives, and even a journalist from the regional magazine specializing in agribusiness. Jessica's story of overcoming adversity had become known in the region as an example of rural and female entrepreneurship. She was often invited to give talks at schools and associations. "I never imagined I'd become a speaker," she said to Mr. George. "You have an inspiring story to tell, and the practical knowledge to teach others. Sometimes it seems surreal. 4 years ago, I barely knew how I was going to feed Emma the next month. And look where you've gotten. You're a living example that we shouldn't underestimate anyone." During the event, Jessica was surprised by the arrival of an unexpected visitor, Mrs. Dorothy. Her former mother-in-law looked visibly aged and worn down. She approached hesitantly, clearly uncomfortable with all the celebration surrounding Jessica. "Jessica, can I talk to you?" "Of course, Mrs. Dorothy." They stepped away from the guests to talk in private. Mrs. Dorothy seemed to be wrestling with her own pride to get the words out. I came to apologize." Jessica was surprised. Those were words she never expected to hear. "Apologize for what, Mrs. Dorothy?" "For everything. For the way I treated you ever since Michael got married. For trying to humiliate you with the sheep. For trying to take back what was yours." Mrs. Dorothy looked down, clearly ashamed. "I was jealous of your success and angry at being made a fool. When I found out the sheep was worth a fortune, I couldn't accept that you had come out on top. And now? Now I see that you deserved all of this. You were a good wife to my son, and you are a good mother to Emma. I was the one who was unfair." Jessica felt a mix of relief and compassion. She had waited so long for this recognition that she no longer even knew if it really mattered. "Thank you for coming to say that, Mrs. Dorothy. Can I visit Emma from time to time? She is my granddaughter, and I miss her." Jessica looked at Emma, who was playing with other children near the sheep. The girl had grown up without the constant presence of her paternal grandmother, but she still had good memories from the times when they got along well. "Yes, you can, but with respect. Emma cannot be used for games or manipulations." "I understand, and I promise she won't be." The two women stood in silence for a moment, watching the party. There were dozens of people celebrating Jessica's success, the same woman Mrs. Dorothy had tried to humiliate years ago. "Jessica, can I ask you a question?" "Of course." "Do you hate me?" Jessica thought for a moment before answering. No, Mrs. Dorothy. I did hate you, but it passed. Hatred hurts the one who feels it more than the one who is hated. And I didn't want to carry that pain anymore. How did you manage to forgive? It wasn't easy, but I realized that as long as I carried anger, you would still have power over my happiness. And I didn't want to give that power to anyone anymore. Mrs. Dorothy began to cry softly. I wasted so much time being bitter and envious. I lost the chance to see my granddaughter grow up because of my stupid pride. It's not too late to change, said Jessica gently. Emma is still young. You can build a good relationship from now on. You would allow that after everything I've done? I would, but on one condition. What is it? That you treat Emma and me with genuine respect, not out of convenience, but because you recognize our worth. I promise. And thank you for giving me a second chance. Mrs. Dorothy said goodbye and left, but not before hugging Emma and apologizing to her granddaughter for her absences too. The girl, with the natural generosity of a child, accepted her grandmother's hug without any grudges. Dear listener, if you are enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we are just starting out, now continuing. After Mrs. Dorothy's departure, the party continued in an even lighter and more festive mood. It was as if a weight Jessica didn't even know she was still carrying had been lifted from her shoulders. Mr. George approached her with a smile. How do you feel after that conversation? Free, answered Jessica without hesitation. Completely free. It's a good feeling, isn't it? It is. Now I can focus completely on the future, with nothing from the past holding me back. That night, after all the guests had left, Jessica sat in the backyard with Emma. The 3 sheep grazed peacefully under the starlight. Mommy, why was Grandma Dorothy crying today? Asked Emma. Because she realized she had done wrong things and wanted to apologize. And did you forgive her? I did, my love. Forgiving is good for the one who forgives. I forgive her too. Can she come play with me sometimes? Yes, she can, if she behaves well. Emma snuggled close to her mother, and they watched the sheep in silence. It was a moment of perfect peace, earned through much struggle and determination. Mommy, when I grow up, will I also help people who are sad like you were before? Asked Emma. What kind of help? Show them that they can overcome, just like you did. Jessica smiled, kissed her daughter's head. That's a beautiful idea, my love, and I'm sure you will help many people. So when I'm big, I'll take care of the sheep and help people. Can I? You can be anything you want, Emma. The whole world is open to you. They stayed there until late, mother and daughter, planning dreams and building hopes. Hope had grazed close to them, as if wanting to join the conversation. 5 years had passed since that first nighttime talk. Emma, now 11, had indeed developed a special talent for handling animals and showed a genuine interest in following in her mother's footsteps. The property had grown significantly. Jessica now owned 12 sheep of the special lineage and had become the state's largest individual producer of quality black wool. She had also formalized her consulting company and gave regular courses on specialized sheep breeding. Veterinary and animal science students from nearby universities often sought her out for internships and research. Emma actively participated in the family business, showing an early understanding of animal management and wool quality. She had become a little expert, able to identify health problems in the animals and assess the quality of the wool produced. Mum, I think Victory is going to give even better wool this year, said Emma, examining one of the sheep. Why do you think that? The new feed is working well. The wool is denser and shinier than last year's. Jessica smiled, proud of the expertise her daughter was developing. You're right. Your eye for quality is getting better and better. The relationship with Mrs. Dorothy had gradually normalized. The former mother-in-law visited regularly, always respectful and interested in being part of Emma's life without causing problems for Jessica. She had become a caring and present grandmother, making up for the lost years with genuine dedication. Sometimes she even helped with small tasks on the property. Jessica, may I make a suggestion? Said Mrs. Dorothy during one of her visits. Of course. Have you ever thought about writing a book about your experience? Many women could be inspired by your story. A book? I don't know how to write. You don't have to write it alone. You could find someone to help. Your story deserves to be told. The idea stuck in Jessica's head. She really had accumulated a lot of knowledge, both about sheep breeding and rural entrepreneurship, and her story of overcoming adversity could truly inspire others. A few weeks later, during a talk she gave at the local cooperative, a literature teacher approached her. "Mrs. Mitchell, have you thought about turning your story into a book? I could help with the writing part. Funny, my former mother-in-law suggested the same thing recently. It's a very inspiring story, and with useful technical information too." "How would it work?" "I would interview you, organize the material, and draft the text. You would review everything before publication." Jessica decided to accept the project. She spent the following months dedicating a few hours each week to telling her story in detail to the teacher. The process was emotionally intense, recalling the difficult early moments, the humiliation, the fear, but also the discovery of her own strength and the gradual building of success. "It's amazing how your perspective on the events changed over time," commented the teacher during one of the sessions. "How so?" "At first, you saw everything as tragedy and humiliation, but now you see it as a necessary part of your growth." "That's true. Today I realize I needed to go through that to discover what I was capable of." The book was ready a year later. The Sheep of Hope, A Journey from Humiliation to Success, was launched in a ceremony on Jessica's own property. The turnout was surprising. People came from several towns, representatives from publishers, journalists, and dozens of women who identified with Jessica's story. Emma, now 12, made a point of officially introducing the sheep to all the visitors, demonstrating her knowledge and passion for the animals. "This is Hope, the first and most special one," she said, pointing to the sheep that had changed their lives. "She taught us that appearances can be deceiving and that we should never give up." The book became a regional success and caught the attention of larger publishers. Within 6 months, it had sold over 5,000 copies and received proposals for national distribution. Jessica used part of the royalties to create a microcredit fund for rural women who wanted to start small businesses. It was her way of giving back the opportunities she had received. "Mom, you're helping other women like you wanted to when you were little," observed Emma. "It's true, my love. And you, will you want to help too when you grow up?" "I do. I'm going to study veterinary medicine and then come back here to work with you. That will be a perfect partnership." On the 7th anniversary of Hope's arrival, Jessica organized a special event. She invited all the women who had received microcredit from her fund to present their businesses. There were honey producers, artisans, small merchants, and even other sheep breeders who had been inspired by Jessica's success. "It's moving to see how one story can multiply opportunities," said Jessica during her speech. "Each one of you proves that there are no dreams too small or people without worth. There are only opportunities waiting to be discovered." The event was covered by the state press and brought even more visibility to Jessica's work. She received invitations to participate in television programs and give lectures at universities. Emma participated in many of these activities, showing increasing interest in becoming an ambassador for her mother's message of overcoming adversity. "Mom, I think our story can help girls my age too," Emma said one day. "How so?" "To show them they don't have to accept it when someone says they're good for nothing, that they can fight and win." "You're right. How about we start giving talks at schools?" "That would be amazing." The partnership between mother and daughter in the lectures proved extremely effective. Emma easily connected with children and teenagers, while Jessica inspired the adults. They developed a joint presentation where Emma talked about growing up amid the family's transformation, while Jessica spoke about the challenges and achievements of the entrepreneurial journey. The success of the lectures led to the creation of a broader educational project. Jessica and Emma began visiting rural schools, bringing not only their story, but also practical knowledge about animal breeding and entrepreneurship. "You are planting seeds of hope in many young minds," said the principal of a school they visited. "It's our way of giving back for the blessings we've received," Jessica replied. On the 8th anniversary of Hope's arrival, a special event was being organized. The City Council had decided to create Municipal Rural Women Entrepreneurs Day in honor of Jessica's journey. The ceremony would take place in the town's central square with the presence of state authorities and representatives of rural women's organizations from across the region. Emma, now 13, had been invited to give a speech representing rural youth. She was nervous but determined. "Mum, what should I say to so many important people?" "Speak from the heart, my love. Tell our story and how it inspired you to dream big." "What if I forget the words?" "Impossible. You know our story better than anyone, and you have a genuine passion for it." The day of the ceremony was sunny and beautiful. The square was packed with people who had come from various towns to attend the event. Jessica was the first to speak, briefly recounting her journey from widowhood to business success. Her voice was firm and emotional. 8 years ago, I was a broken, humiliated woman with no prospects. Today, I am living proof that no one can determine our worth but ourselves. The black sheep they gave me to humiliate me became the gateway to a life I never dreamed possible. But the true miracle wasn't the sheep. It was discovering that I always had strength, I just didn't know it. The audience applauded warmly. Then it was Emma's turn to take the stage. The young girl began with a trembling voice but soon gained confidence. "My name is Emma. I'm 13 years old, and I grew up watching my mother transform from a sad woman into a warrior. I learned that it doesn't matter how we start in life, but how we choose to continue. My mother taught me that every humiliation can turn into strength, every tear into wisdom. Today we care for 12 special sheep, but the most special will always be Hope. Because she didn't just bring money into our home, she brought the certainty that we are capable of much more than we imagine." The audience rose in applause. Many people were crying, moved by the teenager's maturity and sincerity. After the official ceremonies, there was a visit to Jessica's property. Authorities, journalists, and event participants were able to see the famous sheep in person and see up close the structure built over the years. Hope, now almost 9 years old, had become a true matriarch. She led the flock with natural authority and seemed to understand her importance in the family's history. "She really seems to understand she's special," commented the mayor, observing the sheep's behavior. "She always was special," replied Emma. "She just needed people to recognize it." The girl's words perfectly summarized the entire family's journey. Sometimes, value is always present, waiting only to be discovered and appreciated. At the end of the day, when all the visitors had left, Jessica and Emma sat in the backyard as they had for years. The 12 sheep grazed peacefully under the setting sun. "Mum, are you happy with how our life turned out?" "Very happy, my love, but not because of the money or the recognition." "Then because of what?" "Because of the peace we have. Because of the certainty that we overcame every obstacle with dignity, and because I see you growing up strong and confident." "I'm happy too, and I'm excited for when I'll be your official partner in the business. Just a few more years, and I'm sure you'll bring new and even better ideas." Emma stood up to pet Hope, who had approached them. "Hope, thank you for coming into our lives," the girl murmured. "You taught us that even in the hardest moments, hope can appear from where we least expect it." Jessica watched her daughter talking to the sheep and felt a deep emotion. Her journey had begun with humiliation and pain, but it had resulted not only in material success, but in personal growth and in raising a wise and generous daughter. The town church bell struck 6 in the evening, marking the end of another special day. Jessica took a deep breath, absorbing the peace and gratitude she felt. She thought of her husband and how proud he would be to see them like this. She thought of Mrs. Dorothy and how the reconciliation had brought healing to the whole family. She thought of the hundreds of women who had been touched by her story. But mostly, she thought of the black sheep that had arrived as an instrument of humiliation and become a symbol of hope and transformation. At night, after Emma had fallen asleep, Jessica took her usual evening walk through the yard. It was a ritual she had kept for years, a moment for reflection and planning. The sheep rested under the stars, dark silhouettes against the sky. Hope lifted her head as Jessica approached, looking at her with those intelligent eyes that seemed to understand everything. "Thank you," whispered Jessica, stroking the soft wool. "Thank you for being our bridge between suffering and joy, between humiliation and triumph. You taught us that there are no humiliating gifts when we have the dignity to turn them into opportunities, and that sometimes the greatest blessings come wrapped in the paper of contempt." The sheep remained still, as if absorbing every word. For a moment, Jessica felt again that deep connection that had marked their relationship from the first day. "Keep taking care of us," she asked, gently kissing Hope's head. "We still have a lot of work to do together." The stars shone brightly over the small property that had become a symbol of overcoming. Jessica returned home with a heart full of peace and the certainty that the future held even more achievements for her family. 10 years had passed since that first night of conversation with Hope. Emma, now 15, had become an extraordinary young woman. Besides being an excellent student, she had developed leadership skills that impressed everyone. She founded a club at school to encourage other rural girls to value their origins and dream of careers in agribusiness. The club became a model for other schools in the region. "Mom, I got an offer to study veterinary medicine at a private university with a full scholarship," Emma said, beaming. "That's wonderful. How did you manage it?" "The biology teacher recommended me based on my sheep breeding project. They were impressed with my practical knowledge." "Are you going to accept?" "I want to accept, but only if you agree. I don't want to abandon our business." Jessica smiled, proud of her daughter's maturity. "Emma, you won't be abandoning anything. You'll be preparing to take our work to another level. Having a veterinarian in the family will be incredible for our business. So I can accept?" "You can, and you should. I'm sure when you return with your degree, you'll have fantastic ideas for us to implement." Jessica's property had become a small agro-industrial complex. Besides the 12 sheep of the special lineage, she now also raised Angora goats and had diversified into artisanal cheese production. Her book had been reprinted several times and translated into other languages. The motivational talks had become a significant source of income, and she had created an online course on rural female entrepreneurship. The microcredit fund for rural women had already benefited more than 200 entrepreneurs and had partnerships with banks and non-governmental organizations. "Jessica, you've become a national reference," said Mr. George during one of his visits. "Who would have thought that frightened woman from 10 years ago would come so far?" "I'm still the same person, Mr. George. I just discovered abilities that were already within me." That's the most important lesson of your story, to show other women that they also have more capabilities than they imagine. Hope, now a veteran sheep of 12 years, continued to be the undisputed leader of the flock. Her wool had maintained its exceptional quality, and she had become a sort of mascot for the property. Visitors from all over the country came specifically to meet her. Emma had created a small improvised museum telling the story of Hope and her importance in the family's transformation. "It's impressive how an animal can have such a symbolic impact," commented a journalist who came to do a special report. "Hope represents much more than a breeding animal," explained Emma. "She is the symbol that we shouldn't judge the value of things by their appearance, and that sometimes our greatest gifts come in disguise." The relationship with Mrs. Dorothy had completely transformed. The former mother-in-law had become one of Jessica's biggest supporters and a devoted grandmother to Emma. She often helped with events on the property and became a sort of guardian of the family history, telling visitors all the details of Jessica's journey of overcoming. "I was a bitter and jealous woman," she would say without embarrassment. "I tried to humiliate my daughter-in-law because I couldn't accept her worth. But she taught me about forgiveness and gave me a second chance to be a better person." This transparency from Mrs. Dorothy deeply touched visitors and added an important layer to the story. It showed that transformation is possible for everyone, regardless of age or past mistakes. Derek had also changed, though less dramatically. He gradually grew closer to his sister-in-law, asking for advice about small rural businesses. There was never an explicit conversation about the past, but his respectful attitude demonstrated recognition of the mistakes made. Richard, the brother-in-law who lived in Chicago, returned for a visit after 5 years of absence. He was impressed by the transformations and made a point of apologizing publicly for the aggressive methods he had used to try to recover Hope. "Sister-in-law, I have to admit I was completely wrong," he said during dinner. You not only deserved the sheep, but you did much more with her than any of us would have done. What's important is that we are now a family at peace, Jessica replied generously. How can you not hold a grudge? Because resentment is a poison that only hurts the one who carries it. I chose to be free from it. Jessica's wisdom in handling difficult relationships became an important part of her lectures. She taught that forgiveness is not just a gift for the forgiven, but especially for the one who forgives. On the 11th anniversary of Hope's arrival, Jessica received a special invitation. An international university had created an exchange program for rural women entrepreneurs and wanted her to be the first speaker. "It's an incredible recognition of your work," said Emma, reading the invitation. "Are you going to accept?" "I don't know. I've never left the country, and I'm afraid I won't be able to communicate well in English. Mum, you speak from the heart. The language doesn't matter, people understand. And who will take care of the animals? I will. I'm in my last year of high school, I know all the procedures, and Mrs. Martha can help me." Jessica decided to accept the challenge. It was an opportunity to take her message to an even larger audience and perhaps learn new techniques to implement in her work. The trip to the United States was Jessica's first international experience. She was nervous on the plane, but Emma had prepared a notebook with important phrases in English and tips about American culture. The university received her with the honors of a head of state. There were posters with her photo and the story of hope in the hallways. The auditorium was packed with students, teachers, and entrepreneurs from various parts of the world. The lecture was in Portuguese, with simultaneous translation, but Jessica managed to communicate directly with many participants who spoke Portuguese or Spanish. "Your story is universal," said a Mexican student. "In any culture, people recognize the strength needed to transform humiliation into triumph. And your sheep has become an international symbol of hope," added an American professor. "We've heard about her even here." During the week she spent in the United States, Jessica visited farms specialized in breeding fine fiber animals. She learned new techniques she could implement on her property and made important contacts for future exports. She was also invited to participate in a documentary about rural women entrepreneurs being produced by an international television network. "Your story represents hope for millions of women in similar situations," explained the documentary's director. "We want to show that transformation is possible regardless of the initial circumstances." Jessica agreed to participate in the project, thinking of all the women who could be inspired by watching it. When she returned to the United States, she brought a suitcase full of new ideas and a heart overflowing with gratitude. Emma was waiting for her at the airport with a sign that read, "Welcome, International Mom." "How were the animals?" was Jessica's first question. "Perfect. Hope missed you and became more affectionate with me to make up for it," laughed Emma. "And the business?" "Mr. George handled the sales, and I organized the schedule for when you returned. We have 3 speaking requests and 2 new partnership proposals." On the way home, Emma told all the news. The property had been nominated for a Rural Sustainability Award, and a publisher wanted Jessica to write a second book, specifically focused on techniques for raising special sheep. "It seems that while you were conquering the world discovered even more about you," joked Emma. When they arrived at the property, Hope came running to meet Jessica, something unusual for her age. The sheep really seemed to have missed her owner. "Hi, my old friend," said Jessica, petting her with emotion. "I missed you too." That evening, she took her usual walk through the backyard, telling Hope about all the experiences from the international trip. "You know what impressed me the most there," she said to the sheep, "seeing how our story has reached so far. People who don't even know where the United States is know you and our journey. It made me think about how much responsibility we have. We're no longer just a family that overcame hardships. We are symbols of hope for many people." Hope looked at her with those wise eyes, as if understanding perfectly the weight of that responsibility. "But don't worry," continued Jessica. "We'll keep being authentic, taking good care of our family, and helping those in need. Success won't change our values." The 12th anniversary of Hope's arrival coincided with Emma's high school graduation. She had been accepted into veterinary university with a full scholarship, and an honorable mention for her academic record. The graduation ceremony took place at the rural school Emma had attended since she was little. Jessica was in the front row, proud and emotional, watching her daughter receive not only the diploma, but also a special award for student leadership. "Emma Mitchell," announced the principal, "besides being our first student to earn a full scholarship to a prestigious university, is an example of how rural education can form exceptional leaders." During the class speech, Emma spoke about her origins and how her mother's story of overcoming inspired her to always seek the best. "I learned that it doesn't matter where we are born or what difficulties we face. What matters is how we choose to respond to challenges. My mother taught me that every crisis can be a disguised opportunity." After the graduation, there was a party at Jessica's property. Teachers, Emma's classmates, and dozens of family friends celebrated the special moment together. During the party, Hope was the center of attention, as always. Many of the young people present knew her story and made a point of taking photos with the famous sheep. "It's funny to think that when I was little, I thought having a sheep was normal," said Emma to a group of friends. "Only later did I discover that our Hope is a celebrity." "And you? Will you miss home when you go to university?" asked a friend. "Of course I will, but I know I'm going to prepare myself to come back even better. My mother built a solid foundation here, and I want to help expand it even further." Jessica overheard the conversation from afar and felt a mix of pride and anticipated longing. In a few months, Emma would leave to begin her university life, and for the first time in years, she would be alone on the property. But she wasn't worried. Emma had become an independent and wise young woman, prepared to face any challenge. And Jessica knew her daughter would carry with her the values and strength they had built together. "Mrs. Mitchell, aren't you sad about Emma leaving home?" asked Mrs. Martha. "Not sad. Anxious to see how far she'll go," replied Jessica. "She has the whole world ahead of her, and I know she'll make a difference wherever she goes." "And if she decides to stay far away after graduating?" "Then I'll be proud because it will mean she found her place in the world. I didn't raise Emma to belong to me, but to belong to the world." This philosophy of Jessica's about motherhood also became part of her talks. She taught that a mother's true love is to prepare her children to fly high, even if it means flying far away. In the last 2 months before Emma left for university, mother and daughter spent extra time together, organizing every aspect of the business so Jessica could manage everything alone during Emma's absence. "Mom, are you sure you can handle everything by yourself?" asked Emma, worried. "Honey, I took care of you and these animals when I had no experience. Now I have over 10 years of practice. Everything will be fine." "But what if you get overwhelmed?" "I have a strong support network. Mrs. Martha, Mr. George, even your grandmother, Dorothy. And I can hire extra help if I need to." "And you'll tell me about everything that happens?" "I'll send weekly reports," promised Jessica, smiling. "And you can visit whenever you want." "Just don't sell Hope while I'm away," Emma joked. "Never. She'll be here waiting for you to come back with your degree." The day of Emma's departure arrived faster than Jessica expected. It was a sunny, beautiful March morning, but heavy with emotion. Emma had said a special goodbye to each of the 12 sheep, saving Hope for last. "Take care of Mum for me, okay?" she whispered into the veteran sheep's ear. "And keep being our symbol of hope." Hope seemed to understand the importance of the moment. She approached Emma and rested her head against her chest like a farewell hug. "She knows she'll miss you," said Jessica, moved. "I'll miss her too. Promise me you'll both take care of yourselves." "We promise. And you promise you'll take care of yourself and seize every opportunity?" "I promise." The farewell hug between mother and daughter lasted long minutes. It was the end of one era and the beginning of another. "Thank you for everything you taught me, Mom," said Emma with tears in her eyes. "Thank you for giving me a purpose and a reason to fight," replied Jessica. "See you during the holidays?" "See you during the holidays." Jessica stood on the porch watching the car drive away until it disappeared around the bend in the road. Then, for the first time in years, she was truly alone. But strangely, she didn't feel lonely. She felt proud and at peace. She had raised an extraordinary daughter who would now follow her own path. and she had new challenges and opportunities ahead to continue growing. Hope came up to her on the porch, as if wanting to offer comfort. "Now it's just the two of us again, old friend," said Jessica, stroking the sheep. "Let's continue our journey and see where it takes us." With Emma at university, Jessica rediscovered aspects of herself that had lain dormant during the intense years of motherhood and building the business. She enrolled in a business administration course to formalize the knowledge she had acquired through practice. She also started learning English, thinking about future international opportunities. Twice a week, she dedicated a few hours to meet with women who sought her out for advice on rural entrepreneurship. She had become a kind of informal mentor to dozens of women in the region. "Mrs. Mitchell, don't you feel lonely with Emma away?" one of these women asked during a mentoring session. "I miss her sometimes," admitted Jessica. "But I've discovered that loneliness and solitude are different things. Solitude can be very enriching when we know how to make the most of it." "How so?" "When we're alone, we can connect more deeply with our thoughts, our goals, our purpose. It's an opportunity for inner growth." The business continued to thrive, even with Emma away. Jessica implemented some of the techniques she had learned in the United States and managed to further improve the quality of the wool produced. She also diversified the product line more, creating a line of luxury crafts made with the special wool. Partnerships with local artisans created jobs in the region and significantly increased the added value of her production. The second book, focused on breeding techniques, became a reference in the industry and was adopted by several agricultural technical schools. During the July holidays, Emma returned home radiant with happiness. University was exceeding all her expectations. "Mom, I'm learning amazing things," she shared excitedly, "and my professors were impressed when I talked about our work here." "How are your grades?" "Excellent, and I'm already part of a research group on special animal fibers." "That's wonderful. You're building exactly the academic foundation you need." "And there's more. My research advisor wants to come here during the next break to see our operation in person. It will be a pleasure to host him." Emma spent the break helping with the animals and observing all the improvements Jessica had implemented in her absence. "Mom, you're doing incredible work here by yourself," praised Emma. "The wool quality is even better and the new craft line is beautiful." "Thank you, dear. Being alone allowed me to focus on details that might have gone unnoticed before." "And Hope, how is she?" "She's well, but I felt she grew closer to me after you left, as if she understood she needed to compensate for your absence. She really is special. Sometimes I think she understands much more than we imagine." During that break, mother and daughter planned the next steps for the business together. Emma brought several ideas based on what she was learning at university, and Jessica contributed with her practical experience. "When I graduate, we could implement a herd genetic improvement program," suggested Emma. "With scientific techniques, we can ensure the next generations maintain or even improve the wool quality." "That would be fantastic. And perhaps we could expand to other properties in the region, creating a sort of specialized cooperative." "Exactly. We could be the center of excellence for breeding fine fiber sheep in the state." The plans were ambitious but achievable. With Emma's education and Jessica's experience, they would have a powerful combination of theoretical and practical knowledge. When Emma returned to university after the break, Jessica was even more motivated. The plans for the future had renewed her enthusiasm and given new purpose to her work. On the 13th anniversary of Hope's arrival, Jessica organized a special event. It was a celebration not just of the sheep, but of the entire transformation journey she had symbolized. Hope, now 15 years old, was visibly older, but still maintained her dignity and striking presence. She had truly become a living legend. During the event, several people who had been impacted by Jessica's story came to give testimonials. There were women who had started their own businesses inspired by her journey, young people who had chosen rural careers because of her influence, and even people who had simply found strength in difficult times by remembering her story. "Your story taught me that we shouldn't passively accept the labels others put on us," said a young entrepreneur. "When someone told me my business wouldn't work, I remembered Hope and decided to prove them wrong." For me, the most important thing was learning about forgiveness, said an older lady. "Seeing how you forgave your mother-in-law inspired me to forgive situations in my own life." Jessica was moved by the testimonials. Realizing the real reach of her story and how it had touched so many different lives was rewarding in a way she had never imagined. Emma participated in the event via video conference from the university, speaking about how higher education was preparing her to continue the family legacy. "Hope isn't just our special sheep," said Emma through the screen. "She is the symbol that we never know where our blessings are hidden, and that with determination and dignity we can transform any situation." During the party, several children from the region drew pictures of Hope and the property. Jessica was moved to see how her story had become part of the local folklore. One drawing particularly caught her attention. It was made by a girl of about 7 years old and showed a black sheep shining as if made of stars. "Why did you draw Hope shining?" asked Jessica of the girl. "Because she's magical," replied the child, with the simplicity typical of childhood. "She turned you all from sad to happy." "And do you think real magic exists?" "I do. Magic happens when people don't give up and keep trying to be good." The girl's answer stayed in Jessica's mind for days. Perhaps there really was something magical in their journey, not in the supernatural sense, but in the human capacity to transform adversity into opportunity, humiliation into dignity, despair into hope. In the following months, Jessica implemented several new projects. She created an internship program for young people interested in sustainable agriculture and began offering technical courses on breeding special sheep. Her property became an informal learning center, receiving visitors from universities and technical schools across the country. The international documentary on rural women entrepreneurs was released and gained worldwide recognition. Jessica's story was one of the main features, and Hope became known internationally. "It's amazing to think our sheep is famous all over the world," said Emma during a call. "Sometimes I can't believe it myself," admitted Jessica, "but it gives us even more responsibility to keep doing good work." "Mum, have you ever thought about writing a third book?" "About what?" "About this phase of your life. About what it's like to keep growing and reinventing yourself, even after achieving success." The idea interested Jessica. There really was much to share about the challenges and opportunities of this new phase of her journey. At the end of that year, she began working on the third book, this time focusing on entrepreneurial maturity and how to maintain personal growth, even after achieving financial stability and recognition. The 14th anniversary of Hope's arrival coincided with Emma's third year at university. The young woman was about to begin her thesis project and had chosen to develop research on optimizing fiber quality in sheep of special lineages. "Mum, my research project is going to use our flock as a case study," Emma shared excitedly. "My advisor said it's a unique opportunity to scientifically document techniques you developed in practice. Does that mean our property will become the subject of academic study?" "Exactly, and the results could help other breeders improve their flocks. I'm so proud, Emma. You're managing to unite passion, science, and social purpose." "I learned from the best," Emma replied affectionately. During the holidays that year, Emma spent 3 months at home collecting data for her research. She implemented scientific protocols to measure and document aspects of breeding that Jessica had developed intuitively. "It's fascinating to see how you got so many things right without technical training," said Emma, analyzing her first results. "Necessity and careful observation are great teachers," replied Jessica. "When you love what you do, you pay attention to every detail. Your feeding and management methods are at least 10 years ahead of what's taught in most universities." "Perhaps because I developed them thinking specifically about the needs of this specific lineage, not about general theories." Emma's research revealed impressive data on the effectiveness of the methods developed by Jessica. The quality of wool from her flock significantly surpassed national and international standards. "Mum, your results are so good that my advisor wants to propose you be invited to give lectures at scientific conferences." "Scientific conferences? I don't have the academic background for that." "You have something better, concrete results and exceptional practical experience. In academia, that counts for a lot." Jessica Mitchell was honored but intimidated by the prospect. Speaking to academic audiences would be a completely different challenge from her usual motivational talks. Hope, now 16 years old, began showing clear signs of aging. She moved more slowly and spent more time resting, but her presence remained striking. "I think the time has come for us to prepare a successor for Hope," said Emma, observing the veteran sheep. "Do you have any candidate in mind? Victory has shown herself to be a natural leader, and her wool is of almost identical quality to Hope's." "But no one will replace our first companion," said Jessica, moved. "Of course not. Hope will always be unique. But we need to ensure the continuity of the lineage." It was a difficult transition to accept, but a necessary one. Jessica knew Hope would not be eternal, and it was important to have a plan to maintain the legacy. During that year, Victory gradually assumed the role of flock leader, always under the respectful supervision of Hope. It was as if the veteran sheep were passing on her knowledge to her successor. "It's beautiful to see how Hope is teaching Victory," observed Emma. "They have a communication that seems almost human. Hope has always been special that way. She understands much more than she lets on." The following year brought big changes. Emma graduated with honors, and her research was considered so relevant that she was invited to present it at an international animal husbandry conference. "Mom, do you want to come with me to the conference? After all, you are the real expert on this subject." "Me? At an international conference? I don't know if I'm ready for that." "Yes, you are. And it would be incredible to present together, you with the practical experience and me with the scientific documentation." Jessica decided to accept the challenge. It was a unique opportunity to bring her methods to an even wider audience. The conference took place in Canada, and the mother-daughter presentation was an absolute success. Scientists from various countries were impressed by the combination of practical intuition and scientific rigor they represented. "You have created a unique model of integration between empirical knowledge and formal science," said a German researcher. "It's exactly the kind of approach we need in modern agriculture." After the conference, they received invitations to participate in research projects in several countries. It was the definitive international recognition of the work they had built. Back in the United States, Emma made an important decision. Instead of seeking employment at large companies, she would officially partner with her mother to expand the family business. "I have everything I need here," she said, "a solid foundation, an experienced partner, and endless growth possibilities." "Are you sure? You have the qualifications to work anywhere in the world." "And that's exactly why I choose to work here. I want to use my training to make this place even more special." The official partnership between mother and daughter marked the beginning of a new era for the family business. They formally registered the company, Hope Farms Breeding and Specialized Consulting, and began implementing ambitious expansion plans. On the 15th anniversary of Hope's arrival, they organized a special event to officially launch the new company. Local authorities, business partners, academics, and dozens of people who had followed her journey over the years were in attendance. Hope, now visibly elderly at 17 years old, was the guest of honor. She remained dignified and serene, aware of her special role in the ceremony. During her speech, Jessica reflected on the entire journey. 15 years ago, I received this sheep as a cruel gift, meant to humiliate me. Today, she is the symbol of a company that employs 10 people and impacts hundreds of rural families. Hope taught me that the true value of things is not in how they are presented, but in how they are developed. A defective sheep became the foundation of a successful business because she was treated with love, care, and respect. Today, Emma and I together commit to continuing this journey, always honoring the values that hope represents: dignity, perseverance, and hope. Emma spoke next, visibly moved. "I grew up watching my mother turn adversity into opportunity. Now I have the privilege of being her partner in this mission to show that family farming can be prosperous, sustainable, and socially responsible. Hope is not just our mascot. She is our daily inspiration to never give up on our dreams, no matter how impossible they may seem." The event was covered by national and international press. Jessica's story had become a case study in rural entrepreneurship and personal triumph studied in universities around the world. In the following months, the new company implemented several innovative projects. They created an incubation program for young rural entrepreneurs, established partnerships with cooperatives in other states, and developed a line of sustainable products that won over international markets. Hope remained the emotional center of everything. Even in her advanced age, she maintained her striking presence and continued to attract visitors from afar. 1 year after the company's official launch, Emma made a special proposal. "Mom, what if we created a foundation in Hope's name?" "A foundation?" "To support rural women in vulnerable situations. We could offer microcredit, training, and mentorship for those going through situations similar to what you went through." "That's a beautiful idea, Emma. But do you think we have the structure for it?" "We can start small and grow. The important thing is to formalize our commitment to give back the opportunities we received." The Hope Foundation was officially created on the 16th anniversary of the sheep's arrival. It was a non-profit organization dedicated to empowering rural women through education, credit, and emotional support. During the foundation's launch ceremony, several women who had been helped by Jessica's informal programs over the years came to give testimonials. "Mrs. Jessica taught me that being poor is not being inferior," said one beneficiary, "and that with work and dignity, anyone can change their situation. For me, the most important thing was learning to forgive," said another. "Seeing how she forgave those who tried to humiliate her gave me the strength to forgive my own family." The testimonials moved everyone present and confirmed that the impact of Jessica's work went far beyond economic aspects. Hope, now 18 years old, was clearly in her final years of life. She spent most of her time resting in the shade, but still received visitors with her usual dignity. "I think she's waiting for something before she goes," observed Emma. "What do you think it is?" "Perhaps to see our work completed, to see that everything she symbolizes will continue to exist even after her." Jessica agreed with her daughter's intuition. Hope seemed to be consciously following all the developments of the company and the foundation, as if wanting to ensure her legacy was secure. That spring, something happened that deeply touched mother and daughter. Victory, the natural successor to Hope, gave birth to an exceptionally beautiful and healthy lamb. "Look," said Emma, observing the lamb, "he has exactly the same color and wool texture as young Hope." "It's as if he's a continuation of her," agreed Jessica Mitchell. Hope approached the lamb carefully and sniffed him at length as if blessing him. Then she positioned herself close to him, clearly assuming a protective role. "She understood that this lamb is special," said Emma. "Look how she's caring for him." "And what shall we call him?" asked Jessica. "How about Miracle?" suggested Emma, "because he was born just as Hope is reaching the end of her life, like a miracle of continuity." Miracle is perfect. In the following months, Hope dedicated her last energies to caring for Miracle. It was touching to see how the veteran sheep had found a new purpose in protecting and teaching the lamb. Emma scientifically documented this process, observing how Hope transmitted specific behaviors to Miracle that were not instinctive, but learned. "She is literally teaching him," said Emma, amazed. "Behaviors she developed over the years are being passed to the next generation." "Hope was always an exceptional teacher," observed Jessica. "First she taught us, now she's teaching Miracle." On a cold June morning, Jessica found Hope lying peacefully under her favorite tree. The sheep had passed during the night, serene and with no apparent suffering. Miracle was by her side, as if keeping vigil over the mentor who had cared for him in his first months of life. Jessica and Emma cried together for the passing of their special companion. It was the end of an era, but also confirmation that the legacy would continue. "She lived over 18 years, said Emma, moved, far above the normal life expectancy for sheep. "Because she had a mission to fulfill," replied Jessica, "and she only left when she saw everything was guaranteed to continue." Hope's funeral was an event that mobilized the entire community. Hundreds of people came to pay their last respects to the sheep, who had become a regional symbol of hope and transformation. They buried Hope under the backyard mango tree, in the spot where she most liked to rest. A simple but elegant headstone marked the spot, Hope, 2006-2024, taught us that every ending can be a new beginning. The following week, Emma made a proposal that moved Jessica. "Mom, what if we turned the place where Hope is buried into a memorial?" "What kind of memorial?" "A special garden where people can come to reflect and find inspiration, with a plaque telling our complete story." "That's a beautiful idea. Hope deserves to be remembered that way." The Hope Memorial was inaugurated 6 months later. It was a carefully planned garden, with native plants and benches for contemplation. In the center, Hope's headstone was surrounded by flowers that bloomed in different seasons. A bronze plaque briefly told the story of the black sheep who had transformed humiliation into hope, adversity into opportunity. Since its inauguration, the memorial has become a place of pilgrimage for people seeking inspiration in difficult times. Many visitors left small offerings of flowers or notes with requests for strength. "Hope continues to help people even after she's gone," observed Jessica. "She was always special." "Her passage through the physical world was only one part of her mission," replied Emma philosophically. Miracle, now 1 year old, had developed exactly as expected. His wool was of superior quality, even to young Hope's, confirming that the special lineage remained strong. "I think Miracle is going to be even more special than Hope," said Emma, examining the quality of the young ram's first wool. "Different, but not necessarily better," corrected Jessica. "Hope was unique in her time and circumstances. Miracle will be unique in his own time." "You're right. Each has their own mission to fulfill." The Hope Farms Company continued growing and establishing itself as a national reference in specialized sheep breeding and sustainable rural development. The Hope Foundation had already benefited over 500 women with training programs, microcredit, and mentorship. Jessica's third book, Eternal Hope: Reflections on Legacy and Continuity, became a bestseller and was translated into 12 languages. On the first anniversary of Hope's passing, Jessica and Emma organized a special event at the memorial. It was a celebration of life and legacy, not a moment of mourning. "Today, 1 year after Hope left us, we can say her mission was completely fulfilled," said Jessica during the ceremony. "She arrived disguised as humiliation and revealed herself as the greatest blessing of our lives. She taught us about dignity, perseverance, and hope, and she left a legacy that will continue impacting lives for generations." Emma added, "Hope proved that true value has nothing to do with appearances. A rejected sheep became an international symbol of overcoming. This reminds us to never underestimate our own potential." During the ceremony, it was announced that Hope's story would be made into a feature film. An international production company had acquired the rights and promised a faithful and respectful adaptation. "It's incredible to think our story is going to the movies," said Emma. "Hope will inspire even more people." "She deserves this tribute," agreed Jessica. "And perhaps the film will help other families going through difficulties similar to what we faced." 2 years after Hope's passing, Jessica's property had transformed into a small agro-industrial complex with national impact. Besides the special sheep, they now also raised Angora goats, alpacas, and had developed a complete line of high-quality, sustainable products. The company employed 30 people from the region and had become one of the main local job creators. The foundation had expanded its activities to 5 states and was recognized as a model social organization focused on empowering rural women. Emma, at 25, had become a national reference in sustainable animal husbandry and was often invited to give lectures at universities and conferences. Jessica, at 42, was considered one of the leading voices in female rural entrepreneurship in the country and had received several awards for her social and economic contribution. "Sometimes I stop and think about how our lives changed since that morning when Hope arrived," said Jessica, contemplating the property. "And there are more changes coming," replied Emma, smiling mysteriously. "How so?" "Well, actually I have some news to tell you." "What news?" "I received a marriage proposal." Jessica was surprised and emotional. Emma had discreetly dated a classmate during university, but had never spoken about marriage plans. "How wonderful! And are you going to accept?" "I already have, but only after making sure he understood that my life and my work are here." And did he understand? Perfectly. In fact, he's interested in joining our company. He's an animal genetics specialist and can help us develop our lineage even further. That's fantastic, Emma. A new partnership and a new generation to continue our work. Exactly. Hope continues creating opportunities for our family even after she's gone. Emma's wedding was celebrated on the property itself, in the garden of the Hope Memorial. It was symbolic to hold the ceremony at the place that represented the beginning of the entire family transformation. More than 500 people attended the celebration, including beneficiaries of the foundation, business partners, authorities, and friends from the entire journey. During the ceremony, Emma made a point of honoring Hope. Today, I begin a new phase of my life in the same place where our family learned about hope and transformation. Hope taught us that every ending can be a new beginning. May this marriage be the start of another generation committed to the values she represented. Emma's husband, Nathan, was truly a valuable addition to the company. An expert in animal genetics, he brought scientific knowledge that allowed them to further optimize the quality of the flock. With his arrival, they managed to implement a genetic improvement program that ensured the continuity of the special lineage for many generations. It's incredible to think that Miracle now has a scientifically documented genealogy tracing back to Hope, said Nathan, analyzing the genetic data. Hope would be proud to know her lineage is secured for the future, replied Jessica, and that her story continues to inspire new generations. 3 years after the wedding, Emma gave birth to a girl who was named Lily. She was the 3rd generation of the family to grow up on the property that Hope had helped transform. Look, said Emma, placing the baby in her lap. She'll grow up hearing Hope's story from the cradle. And perhaps one day continue our work, said Jessica, emotional at the sight of her granddaughter. Absolutely. This property is our legacy for her. Lily grew up quickly, surrounded by animals and inspiring stories. By age 2, she already showed a special fascination for Miracle, who had become the undisputed leader of the flock. Look how she interacts with the animals, observed Nathan. She seems to have a natural connection, just like Emma did at her age. It's the family genetics, joked Jessica. Hope left that mark on all of us. On the company's 15th anniversary and the 20th of Hope's arrival, they organized the biggest celebration in the property's history. The event lasted 3 days and included lectures, workshops, an animal exhibition, and a sustainable rural products fair. National and international authorities attended, as well as hundreds of beneficiaries from the social programs and business partners. During the event, a bronze statue of Hope was unveiled in the center of the memorial. The work, created by a regional artist, perfectly captured the dignity and serenity that characterized the special sheep. This statue will ensure Hope is remembered forever, said Jessica during the unveiling. She represents not only our special sheep, but all those who were underestimated and managed to prove their true worth. The ceremony was emotional. Many people cried upon seeing the statue, remembering how Hope's story had impacted their own lives. Lily, now 3 years old, touched the statue affectionately and said, "Grandma Hope, thank you for taking care of our family." The child's phrase perfectly summarized the feeling of everyone present. Hope had truly taken care of the family, guiding them through transformations that once seemed impossible. That night, after all the guests had left, 3 generations of the family gathered at the memorial: Jessica, Emma, and Lily. 20 years ago, I was broke and without hope, said Jessica. Today, I see my daughter graduated and married, my granddaughter healthy and happy, and a company that employs dozens of families. And it all started with an attempt at humiliation, added Emma. Hope transformed what would have been our greatest defeat into our greatest victory. Lily, even though she was little, seemed to understand the importance of the moment. She approached the statue and hugged it tenderly. "Now we're going to take care of you, Grandma Hope," murmured the girl. It was the promise of a new generation to continue honoring the legacy left by the special sheep that had changed the destiny of an entire family. As the stars appeared in the night sky, Jessica felt a profound peace. Hope had fulfilled its mission in an extraordinary way, transforming not only their lives, but touching thousands of others around the world. The black sheep that had arrived as an instrument of humiliation had become an eternal symbol of hope, dignity, and transformation. And its story would continue to inspire future generations, proving that in the end, love, perseverance, and dignity always triumph over cruelty and prejudice. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this touching story of overcoming and hope. Were you moved by the journey of Jessica and her family? Leave in the comments which moment impacted you the most, and if you know anyone who has gone through similar situations. Your opinion is very important to us. Don't forget to leave your like to support our work and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other emotional stories like this one. Thank you very much for staying with us until the end.